Righto, continuing on with the Chinese premium tanks, notably the Therese. We've got the WZ-112, the original Chinese premium Tier 8 Heavy, the older brother to the WZ-111. Though being the older brother, I must say, this is a tank that I found an initial liking to, but in subsequent playing of the WZ-111, it's shedded in a bit of a bad light. But that aside, before we get into the match, popping in the strat sketch, we are going to be a bit ballsy, because as you may have noticed at the beginning of the match, they only have two top tier heavy tanks, so we're going to book it over here, cutting down the 7-8 and being very aggressive in taking city to get better command of the map, because they have more medium tanks, so they will have very good coverage of the centre and the western side, so we need to do our best not to present ourselves on the instant of the 7-6 and give those mediums targets and getting over here to where they can't aid the heavies. So, getting back into the match, as we book it over here, like I said, on the 7-8. Now, to my original point, where I was saying the WZ-111 puts this in a bit of a bad light, you are about to see a prime reason why that's the case. WZ tracks us. That's all well and good. He hit that front left and track. Watch this. This is the angle we presented the Tiger to. He penned our side with AP with little issue. You cannot... Oh dear God, we just shot a part of the wall that wasn't physically there. You cannot side scrape to any reliable degree in the WZ-112, especially when compared to the 111. You have 80mm on this side, not the 100. Was it 110? We will look at that in Tank Inspector. It is a third again less than the WZ-111, so that's already a mark against it. Now, being aggressive, coming around the corner, using that dune, the dirt mound, if you will, to try and cover that lower plate and not side scrape. What's this? I didn't aim it all the way. It missed horribly. You will find you cannot do that with this tank. It blooms much more than the WZ-111, which is the second issue I've taken with the tank. At its own, it doesn't make it horrible, but if you have a WZ-111, you will wonder, why would I bother running the 112? Poor Panther 88. You never want to poke round corners with tanks with mid-mounted turrets, which is one thing the 111 has going for it. You've got that front-mounted turret, which makes it much better at peeking corners and not exposing as much as your tank, but the 111 can do that as well. Now, ignoring the Panther 88 and nobody guard that 111 that we waffled on 3 times in a row, there. Some satisfaction. Ah yes, that Panther 88 panned the cupola on this. Yeah, he's got a 203 pen gun, and oh, he could easily go through that because it's only about 160 effective. I find, despite being for all intents and purposes an identical turret to the 111, the 112 has its cupolas penned more frequently. That may just be for me, who's to say, but all the same, and third strike and falsely against the tank for me. Now, Looking in that area ahead of us, just to the right of the cab, or on the minimap north of it and headed out west. You never want to push that way, especially in a heavy. They will always have CDs sitting over on the two-liner that be K, J or H, and they will kill you, and in short order if you go there. So we're going to go push up the middle in the town to where we've got cover and possibly a bush to spot them from, which we've got 380 view range on the WZ-112, so we can do just that if need be. Now we found a 402. This tank was not pushed and deteriorated appropriately. It used to be a T10 and had very good armor on the hull. The Deteriorate Premium has, as we've run errantly into the building, ignore that. It has no notable armor on it, and it is a shame. But this isn't a video about the Fortune soon. We'll get into that in the future. Loading up a heat round, because we've got a proto to have a go at. And our AP, perhaps side on will go through, but we're not going to try that. Watch this. Again, making the mistake of not fully aiming it in. It finds its way into his gun. The gun handling on this is nearly 10% worse on the WZ-111, which is already notably, well not notably, slightly worse than the IS-6, so you're doubling down on the inaccuracy with the WZ-112 as far as the reticle blooming out on full movement. Of which, watch this, GW Panther, barely any distance away, we just nailed the living crap out of the ground, 80 meters away, and it finds its way into the ground. Thankfully hitting the 1390. So yes, this tank is, it wouldn't be so much in its own right a bad tank, but it has the WZ-111 to contend with. We'll get more into that when we look at Tank Inspector. But with the match over, we're going to look at the after battle. Now, that was a 2400 damage match. Not all that bad. With 86,000 earned. And for the damage, that's respectable. It's no worse than the WZ-111. Now here's the key problem. You've got 16 shots fired, 8 hits. You cannot afford not to aim in with this gun, which is very much a hindrance since you cannot side scrape, and the lower plate, if you need to peek out, is noticeably weaker than the WZ-111. Now, looking at that in detail on Tank Inspector, yeah, we're not going to be doing that. This is what Tank Inspector thinks the WZ-112 looks like. But without going into complete detail, and you'll need to trust me on this, that lower plate is significantly weaker than the WZ-111, but that isn't the only problem. Its fuel tanks are there, and they will catch a light on a very consistent basis, which, unfortunately, as a false mark against the tank, compared it to the 111, though going into the stats specifically, it does have a lower top speed at 45 compared to the WZ-50. It has a better power-to-weight ratio, but hardly significant enough to where it does not feel more mobile than the WZ-111. It has less hit points, 50 less, take that as you will, not necessarily an issue. But then we see all of these stats being worse than the WZ. The bloom is nearly 10% worse, which means you're going to be aiming in for longer. But tying that to a worse reload, nearly 2/3 a second longer reload, when you have worse dispersion on movement with a longer reload, that makes for a very aggravating tank to play with. It is no longer a side grade, it is a slightly worse analog. Some people would say, if I would hit the right button, excuse me, the upper plate armor model is bugged because obviously we've got that mess. But again, ignoring the value on the bottom right hand side, it has a flat, non-piked upper glacis on it, which can be more effective whilst angled. But you saw the Tiger 2 pen, and with the lower plate being weaker with the fuel tanks behind it, for me there is nothing the 112 brings to the table that the 111 doesn't do better. So, in perspective, the tank, whilst not bad in its own right, is unfortunately a worse, and I hate admitting this, because I've played the tank extensively, a worse alternative to the 111. But if you can get the 111 and you want something that is close enough, it will get you nearly to where the WZ111 is. The 112 is not a bad option. Would I say it's better than the R6 or even a side grade to the R6? Unfortunately, no. It's really not. I don't want to keep ragging on the tank and say don't buy it, but I cannot stress enough that as the final verdict, you must look at the tank with a grain of salt. If need be, you need a tier 8 Chinese heavy tank premium and you can't get the WZ111 for whatever reason. The 112 is not a bad option. It's simply not the best option. And with that said, as always, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you found this the least bit informative, if not entertaining. Good day.